Toyota's TRD Pro series of vehicles are some of the most respected off-roaders on the market. They're not about flash, they're not about power. They're about going out, exploring, and having the capability and, more importantly, the reliability to get back home. Here we have the TRD Pro treatment on the biggest truck Toyota makes. So let's grab the keys and check out the Tundra TRD Pro. So this Tundra TRD Pro is just under $49,000, which puts it within $100 of the more luxurious, well, I should say the most luxurious Tundras that you can buy, namely the Limited, and there's one other trim as well. And you still get things like 2 fake hood scoops, incredibly plasticky door handles, a shift lever that's from like a '99 Solara, and the steering wheel out of a base Tacoma. So, yeah. So this is by no means a modern or luxurious truck, and with this TRD Pro package on here, this Tundra starts competing with things like the Ford Raptor, and the Ram TRX, and the Ram Rebel, all of which kind of outdo the Tundra in every measurable category there is, except for 2, and those are important too. 1, price. At 50 grand, at under 50 grand, this thing is about 20 grand cheaper than what you can get a Raptor for. Now, granted, you'll have to deal with dealer markups, and that's a whole different story. But at MSRP, it's about 20 grand cheaper. And reliability. Now, there's another thing to consider if you're looking at something like a TRD Pro product, and it's the fact that they hold their value unlike really anything out there. If you wanted to go and buy a TRD Pro 4Runner from Toyota, you'd probably pay, with about 30 to 40,000 miles on it, about what they want for MSRP. So even with dealer markups, you're spending well over the MSRP, and they just hold their value incredibly because they are so reliable, they're so durable, and they're so desirable. Now, I want to address something as well. Something like a Ford Raptor and the Ram TRX. Those are essentially the Lamborghinis of off-road trucks. They are incredibly capable, incredibly cool, but they spend more time on Instagram than they do on the road, or off the road in this case, doing what they're supposed to be doing. Not the case with these TRD vehicles. Typically, and I'm generalizing a little bit, but it holds some water, typically Toyota TRD Pro people, the people purchasing these vehicles, are people that are going to go out and they are going to off-road. There's something that I've gotten kind of into lately called overlanding. If you're not familiar with what it is, it's essentially when you take your vehicle and you drive over vast expanses of land, hence overlanding. And for that, you're going to incredibly remote places, so you need something that's going to be reliable, that's going to be durable, that can take a hit, keep going, and get you back home safely. Because, unlike in the Baja 1000, there's not support vehicles, so if you break down, it's not okay. But with that, let's stop generalizing and talk specifically about this Tundra TRD. Now, I will add one caveat before we dive into the details, and it's the fact that the day before I went out to film this, they leaked the next generation Tundra, and it's a good thing because this truck is essentially from 2007, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But let's talk about this guy here. Under the hood, you have a 5.7 liter, silky smooth, naturally aspirated V8. You have a TRD specific exhaust out the back, and it sounds incredible. This is what you want from an engine perspective, as opposed to that naturally aspirated V6 that we had in the Tacoma earlier last year. The engine is good for 381 horsepower and 401 pound-feet of torque. Not stellar numbers, especially when considering that it's competing against the Raptor and the TRX, which is, you know, obviously a Hellcat engine. But those are forced induction power plants. This is a naturally aspirated, just gulping in air, massive V8. And like I said, it sounds incredible. And the thing to take away from this is Toyota's whole ethos is simplicity. It's a simple, naturally aspirated engine. It's been tried and true. Toyota Lexus engines that are specifically their V8s are incredibly durable. They have incredible longevity. And then of course you have your old reliable 6-speed automatic gearbox. It's fine. It does a pretty good job actually in automatic mode, knowing what gear you want to be in. If you put your foot down, it will drop a gear, and then you get to listen to that engine purr. but not super reliable. EPA rates it at about 17 mpg highway. I've been observing just under 15 all week with this thing, and I mean, it's a big V8. What do you expect? So it's not fast. It's big and it's beastie, but you don't say that a sumo wrestler isn't an athlete just because it's not quick in a foot race. Here's the cool thing though, none of that stuff that I just mentioned is really that important for this truck. This is the TRD Pro, so what you get with that is a TRD skid plate up front. You have Fox shocks, dampers with external reservoirs for added travel and articulation when you're off-road. They also do a great job at composing the body in a corner on the road. And you have a TRD specific wheel and tire package. They're BBS forged wheels and they look really cool, and they have added grip with these Michelin tires because it's kind of a hybrid tire, I should say. It's not totally off-roady. It's not like something you would get as a stock tire from a Raptor or a T-Rex, but it's a good hybrid tire. You also have Rigid Industries fog lamps, and they're incredibly bright. The lighting package on this vehicle, aside from the taillights, is fantastic. Taillights are incandescents, but up front LEDs everywhere, super great visibility, and that's really nice to have when it starts to get dark and you're on a trail. Now, even with all of this off-road kit that I just mentioned, it's still down on accessories, we'll say, toys, as opposed to something like a Ford Raptor. It doesn't have a pitch or roll meter in your gauge cluster, you don't have a 360 camera, you don't have cameras all over the body. It's showing you where your wheels are if you're going to be crawling. To be honest, this and the Raptor and the T-Rex, these are bigger trucks. If you're actually going to go crawling, if you're actually going to go trail riding, something smaller is going to be better. A Tacoma TRD, a Jeep Wrangler, those are smaller, narrower trucks. Those are going to be better for off-roading. This is, again, kind of an overlanding vehicle. Big, expansive pieces of land, eats it up, as long as you don't run out of fuel first. Now let's talk looks, and typically I like to let people make their own decisions on this sort of thing, but there's a couple things that I want to point out. One, this is the Lunar Rock Gray. This is one of like only 5 paint color options that you can get. Now, in the previous year, 2020, 2019, you can get a Voodoo Blue, you can get the Army Green. The Army Green is the one that I would have. I think it suits the size and character of this truck really well, but this Lunar Rock still looks really cool. A lot of people don't go for the milky grays, I get it, but I think it looks pretty cool. Now, one of the things that you will get that is TRD specific is the grille. The big kind of honeycomb with the big Toyota spelled out. Does it remind you of the Ford Raptor? We get along the side, and we already talked about the BBS forged wheels, and they look pretty cool. They're specific to the TRD, but one thing that I want to point out is the fact that this is not your typical Raptor type thing where you have this decal on the side of your bed. No, Toyota is like, TRD is for life. They stamped it into the sheet metal. They've stamped it into the sheet metal on the tailgate as well, because yeah, that's how you do it. All of that's to say, in my opinion, this thing looks about as badass as it is. Let's talk interior. And then as we get onto the interior, it is basic as hell. However, it is super spacious. You could put a living room couch in the back seat and you'd be totally fine. Now, the back seats do fold up to make extra room. If you are going to overland, if you are going to camp in this thing, that's not a bad place to do it. You could either sleep on the seats or you could fold the seats up, put a little mattress down there, and you'd be just fine. Super spacious, pretty comfy, to be honest, and you have that contrasted red stitching, pretty nice. And then moving up to the front seats, the seats are fairly comfortable. There is absolutely no bolstering whatsoever, which is something that I'm not particularly a huge fan of, but I get it for something this size. It is incredibly spacious and the driving position is really nice. Now, these seats you'll also get a contrasted TRD stitching package. It's the red stitching you've seen throughout the cabin, and it has a TRD in gray. Again, very specific to the TRD Pro package, looks really nice. And then we have to talk about the technology package. Like I mentioned, it's still missing a few things from competitors, and you expect that, especially with the new generation coming out and this thing essentially being from 2007. However, they did right the ship in terms of technology back in 2020, because in 2020 they added the new head unit from JBL with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. 2019s and before did not get Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. It's my opinion, kind of unacceptable, but it's nice to have it here. Aside from that, the general impressions of the interior is it's massive more than anything. The materials are, well, they're Toyota materials, and it's pretty apparent that this thing is from 2007 from a design perspective. But again, we'll get a new generation in the next year or two. Now, before we wrap up, I do want to talk about driving impressions a little bit, because we've covered a lot of the off-roading stuff and the specifics, but we didn't talk about how it drives and sits on the road. This is where the truck is going to spend most of its time, realistically. Even if you're a TRD person and you are going to take this off-roading, it's going to spend most of its time here on the tarmac. And to be honest, the Fox shocks on here are a welcome addition. Typically, you get these trucks that are super bouncy in the back unless you put weight back there. The body is super composed. There's not a lot of jostling on the highway at highway speeds. The steering is horrendously numb, and I have no clue what the front tires are doing, but with something of this size and this sort of tire, this breed of tire, you kind of expect that. But like I mentioned, the Fox dampers do a good job at composing this big, heavy body of this truck in a corner. I'm not going to say that it's sporty, but you put your foot down, and it sounds pretty damn good, I will say. The 5.7 liter V8 is very noticeable, and to be honest, that's the big reason that you buy this truck. This sound. That's why you buy the truck. And with that, that brings us to the final thoughts. And we've been in and outside of this thing. We've talked about everything. And here's basically my takeaway. It's just too old. And again, this is going to be fixed with the incoming generation in 2021 or 2022 maybe. We didn't have full disclosure on that as of yet, but it was just a leak. In any case, this truck is essentially from 2007. Mechanically, this is how Toyota does their business. They build something that's tried, that's true, that's durable, dependable, reliable, and they send it out. And until it absolutely needs to be updated, they won't touch it. Because you can take this thing anywhere at any time, beat the absolute crap out of it, and it'll still ask for more. And that's kind of the most endearing thing about this. Yes, it's lacking technology from every other competitor. Yes, it's lacking fuel economy from pretty much every other competitor. And from a design perspective, it's but you don't buy a Tundra TRD Pro, you don't buy any Toyota TRD Pro product for the interior, for the technology. You buy it because it's going to be incredibly dependable, and you're actually going to be able to take it off-road and get a lot of capability out of it. This thing will do fantastically for anyone that's taking this thing off-road. So with that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and hit that thumbs up, leave a comment, let me know what you think of the TRD, and if you would have any other Toyota TRD products over this, and I'll see you next time.